Whoa, what's good with you, Yang Gang? It's your boy Triple Cup Chuck, and I'm up. And I'd like to thank every individual person who likes, shares, subscribe, and rock out with me. And I'd like to thank everybody who helped me find my niche. And on this video right here, I want to say shame, shame, shame. What a shame. But we're going to get to diving into this here right after the introductions. Let's go.
Feel it right, told Chuck, I feel like every night is all night. I'm up, double cup, feel it right, told Chuck, I feel like every night is all night. I'm up, double cup, feel it right, told Chuck, I feel like every night is all night. I'm up, double cup, feel it right, told Chuck, I feel like every night is all night.
So, friends, there's been a controversy unfolding online over the past 5 days or so. SNL announced new cast members. One of them is Shane Gillis, and almost immediately some quite racist remarks about Asian Americans were unearthed from his podcast, and SNL has now fired him.
Yeah.
However,
he said some terrible things.
Yeah.
And specifically about Andrew Yang. And Andrew Yang, breaking with our current cultural moment, said, I don't want to see Shane Gillis fired.
Right.
I would like to speak with him.
He said, obviously, these comments are problematic, but I don't think he should be fired.
Exactly. And then the New York Times reports, they're quoting from the, quote, Asian American community, that Andrew Yang is basically a sellout because he does not want to see Shane Gillis fired and canceled from polite society.
I don't agree with him, but at the same time, I do agree with the First Amendment of freedom of speech. Now, I don't think he should have been fired for that, but at the same time, if you didn't like what he said, I think you should have boycotted him, and maybe he got fired from low ratings. But from that, being a comedian, that's like a person that's being a actor, and he played a role where he was a slave master, and he used the N-word in a movie, and then 5 years down the line, in another movie, they say, well, we can't hire you because of this movie that you did, that you used the N-word in. Or somebody do something in their personal life that don't have no reflection on the job or the ability of what they doing. Especially a comedian. He's supposed to ruffle some feathers. But I will say this here. I did not listen to his podcast. I heard some snippets and clips and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I do not agree with nothing he was saying, but at the same time, I agree with the fact of he shouldn't have been fired for that. Now, him being an asshole, yes, he is, but fired, nah. Let's continue this video.
For the
Speaks
entirety
to the entire
of the community.
3 million Chinese Americans, 1 million Indian Americans, God knows how many other people, and is saying that he's basically a sellout and is betraying his community for trying to urge forgiveness in our society. How are we supposed to function?
Right.
We're a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just live in these like balkanized racial communities?
Hey, I got to give a timeout for a second. They have an experiment that's called the projects. Now, on this project experiment, what they did was they took rats and they condensed them on one side of a cage, and they had a limited amount of food, and they were seeing how they was going to operate. And on the other side of a cage, they had a couple of rats where they had a lot of space and plenty of food, and they were seeing the rats that they condensed into a small location and barely had resources. They was more hostile amongst each other, and the ones that had plenty of space, they was able to get along with each other. So with that being said, the projects was they was taking humans and they was condensing them into a small area, and they gave them limited amount of resources, and that became the housing projects. So it was just a project and an experiment to see how would people act. So when you condense a bunch of people into a small area, there was more hostile amongst each other. And by that being said, what the people with this statement was, what they want everybody to do is separate and put them in their own different categories. I just wanted to give a tidbit about that, what the whole thing about the project experiment is.
Gillis, including Andrew Yang, and what really bothers me is this kind of reporting where they clearly had a story they wanted to write.
Right.
And then they found the person who would give them the quote to write the story. And so they used this one person and her quote, which she's fine to hold, is fine, have that opinion.
Yeah, whatever.
But don't use that to say that you represent
Yeah.
the entire Asian American community.
We already know. I know exactly how this happened. This guy was going through Twitter. He saw this tweet. He's also an Asian American himself. Clearly agrees with this woman. He's like, hey, you know what? I work at the New York Times. Let's write a story about this.
Let's make it a thing.
So he quotes her, writes this complete BS narrative about Andrew Yang, and now the paper of record is smearing the first major Asian American Democratic candidate and basically saying he's not Asian enough, that he is a betrayer of his race.
Yeah.
And you know, as somebody who holds, you know, unorthodox views for somebody from the Indian American community, how many Indian Americans you see in the media business, I know exactly how this feels. They come at you constantly. They basically say you're a traitor to your race, or you're betraying your, look how white you're acting, or like, oh, you've been co-opted by whitey. The whole point of this country is we get to believe what
The whole purpose of this country is freedom. The freedom of speech, freedom of democracy, capitalism, gender, race, nationality, culture. That is the purpose of this country, to have the right to do as you would like to do as an American, where you will not be government by the government, not a democracy, it's not a dictatorship, it's the freedom of every individual person. That's the purpose of this country.
to tell you.
Well,
That's not what we're about here.
And they also
Yeah.
point out some of the jokes that he makes. You know,
Yeah,
the
right.
opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian who likes math, or
Yeah.
saying I'm Asian American, so I know a lot of doctors. Like,
Yeah.
when I heard those things, first of all, it seemed to me like he was making fun of the stereotypes of the Asian community
It's
rather
obvious.
than trying to like. That's what he's doing. He has a sense of humor.
Yeah, and they're saying, oh, Andrew's perpetuating harmful stereotypes about Asian Americans. No, he's not. He's calling them out. And you know how
He's
you
breaking
break
the mold.
Yeah,
That's
I was
what
gonna
he's
say, do you
doing.
know how you break that by being a major presidential candidate, making millions of dollars in Silicon Valley? I mean, that's actually how you break the stereotype. And it's just, once again, they want to control the way that we think about race, the way that we talk about race, and then they use their woke allies here in order to, perpetuate this narrative and these basically chains around how we're all allowed to behave. And Andrew and me and so many other Asian Americans who happen to be breaking that mold, you become a target of it.
Why do you think Donald Trump get away with calling the news fake? He's saying, oh, it's fake news, fake. Now, I can't do no Donald Trump impression, but y'all know he say fake news all the time. Situations like this is the reason he get away with calling the news fake. Let's get back to the video.
Want to control the way that we think about race, the way that we talk about race, and then they use their woke allies here in order to, perpetuate this narrative and these basically chains around how we're all allowed to behave. And Andrew and me and so many other Asian Americans who happen to be breaking that mold, you become a target of it.
It's all virtue
Yeah.
signaling for white liberal
Exactly.
elites.
That's right.
Okay, one last thing before we get up out of here. And now this is a creation of me. People that's getting sensitively hurt about what the next person's saying, they need to get a little bit more what you call life. Find your own snitch. Your own stitch that you do. Find something that you like. And if your stitch is hating on what somebody else hate on, make a video about why this person hate this here. I get that. That's cool. All that's good. But when you fire a person because of his opinions, as long as he not out there hurting nobody, his opinions is his opinions. You don't have to agree with him. That's the American way. That's one of the things that we have in this country. I could say that 1,000 times. But anyway, appreciate y'all for rocking with me. That's why we got this open panel on YouTube. If y'all feel the same way, leave a comment. Y'all feel differently. If I missed something, leave it down there and we can chop it up from there. Well, this your boy Triple Cup Chuck and I'm out. And remember, I don't do this for me, I do this for we. So like, share, subscribe, and holler at your boy. Man, I appreciate all of y'all for rocking with me. Last video been starting to bump back up. Thank y'all. Let's get it.